Opportunity Department, Civil Rights Division. And we have with us Representative Doug Mann. I will allow him to introduce himself, but I did ask him to come join us. And I would like to thank Rika Edwards for her work in working with his aide to get him here this morning virtually. And I had come across Representative Mann's name in doing some reading and hearing articles on a KCUR talking about why Missouri does not have equivalency with the Fair Housing Act. And some of you may know that when I was in Kansas, I did do some fair housing investigation. And then when I came here to Kansas City, Missouri, was a bit perturbed that we did not have that here. So as I had done some reading about that and talking with our senior civil rights investigator, Dan O'Connor, who will be talking a bit later about that and learning why, I came across Representative Mann's name and his efforts. And being April is Fair Housing Month, I thought it was only fair that he be our first speaker for our inaugural webinar. And so I will go ahead and turn it over to Representative Doug Mann. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me. I want to start by thanking everyone for joining this call and for the work that you do to try to bring equity and justice to the citizens of Missouri. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about how I got here, here being the capital, and then talk a little bit about some bills that are filed that deal with housing, and then give a little bit of information on how y'all can help to get good legislation passed and to stop bad legislation from being put in place. So my journey to being here all starts with my mother. When I was growing up, we didn't have a lot financially. We struggled a lot of the time, but my mother was very involved in advocacy in our community. I grew up in a small town of about 5,000 people in Western New York. And since she was very involved in advocacy and she couldn't really afford to get childcare all of the time, she would bring me along to meetings and events and rallies. So if you've ever been to like a city council meeting or you've been to a rally and there's like a small child there, I was that small child when I was growing up. And it was her dedication to the issues that mattered most to her, things like women's rights, reproductive justice, things along those lines. That really engendered in me the importance of civic engagement and working with people in order to make sure that the laws and the policies that govern our communities are fair and just. And as I moved forward through my career of advocacy, politics, and the law, it's really her that's in the back of my mind pushing me each and every day. So my journey started, like I said, when I was young, but then when I got to college, I became much more involved, being the founding vice president of my university's first LGBTQ organization. This was in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s. And doing that and having that experience, working alongside a lot of individuals who were very passionate about this subject, really kept that fire going and really caused me to move forward further. And now I'm a civil rights attorney. I am the representative for District 50. And throughout all of those experiences, I've had the privilege of standing side by side, hand in hand with many individuals who have unwavering passion and exceptional talent that they are using in order to fight for justice. And those inspiring individuals teach me a lot of lessons and give me a lot of hope that if we continue to fight, if we continue to push for these things, we will eventually be victorious. Two people in the Capitol that I want to give specific shout outs to are reps from the Kansas City area, Jamie Johnson and Ashley Awney. I have the privilege of sitting with them on the Emerging Issues Committee, which is one of the catch-all committees that gets a lot of bills that might not fit perfectly elsewhere. And really just seeing them week in and week out be fervent advocates for their constituents, the people of Missouri, and the people that are oftentimes left behind in society, really, gives me that energy on like the tougher days here in the Capitol to really keep going. So stepping back a little bit, after college, I got a job as a teacher on Chicago's Southwest Side. I taught history and AP government, and I had the privilege of working with countless remarkable students. And watching them and working with them, I witnessed, that they had a lot of brilliance. They were very passionate, that shone brightly, but their paths were often obstructed by the realities of their socioeconomic situation. And while I had, experiences growing up, I was a young kid. I didn't really understand a lot of this, but like I saw how the profound impact that policy failures and a lack of investment in communities can have on hindering talented individuals from reaching their full potential, and why it's so important that we dismantle systemic barriers that exist that are hindering those individuals. Now, while I was living in Chicago, I met my wife. She was working in care coordination at a federally qualified health center at the time. And, we got engaged, we got married, and she was gracious enough to agree that she would financially and emotionally support me if I went to law school. So without her, I would not be sitting here. I would not be doing the work that I'm doing. So she also deserves a very special shout out. So after doing some research, applying to various law schools, I decided to attend Mizzou Law. And while I was there, I pursued a range of public interest internships, working on a variety of issues that were important to me. And I was fortunate enough to get a clerkship at a civil rights firm in Columbia, TGH Litigation. And during my time there, I've had the opportunity to work on many cases spanning employment, education, and housing, fighting for individuals who have been discriminated against in a multitude of ways. And while I was there, in my time there, I've worked predominantly with the Missouri Human Rights Act, which is the law that allows people to sue when they're being discriminated against. It's the main vehicle that's used by civil rights attorneys in Missouri. And also during my time there, I have gained a deep understanding of the negative ramifications of a bill known as SB 43. Now, some of you might be unfamiliar with SB 43. It was a bill that was passed by the legislature in 2017, the Missouri legislature in 2017, and it substantially altered the MHRA. Some things that it did is that it altered the protections that individuals had from discrimination. It altered the safeguards and the ability for individuals to gain recourse when they are discriminated against by making it harder to sue and then harder to win when you are in court. One of the main changes was changing the standard of proof from a contributing factor to a motivating factor. So if you are trying to prove that someone discriminated against someone based on race, you have to prove that it was their race that caused them to do it, not that their race was part of the reason why they discriminated against them. It has to be the main reason, which I'm sure you can guess is a much harder thing to prove, because when people are discriminating against individuals, they tend to be, a little bit more sneaky about it, if you will. This SB 43 also eliminated numerous fair housing safeguards that existed within the MHRA at the time. And the elimination of those safeguards is what put Missouri out of compliance with the Federal Fair Housing Act. So right now, under the MHRA, you cannot be discriminated against in housing for disability or familial status. Those are the pieces under the way that like the MHRA is written that are protected in housing. So through those changes, not only were funds diverted, federal funds from Missouri. So when you are in compliance with the Fair Housing Act, the federal government will send states money in order to enforce that. Because we are out of compliance, we do not get that money. On top of that, it has really blemished Missouri's reputation across the country. For example, when the bill was passed and enacted, the NAACP issued a travel advisory for Missouri, telling people that were visiting Missouri, that were planning on moving to Missouri, to exercise the utmost caution. Because I believe that the words were used was that the law created a license to discriminate in Missouri. And from what I have read, this was the first time that the NAACP had issued such a travel advisory for a U.S. state. Now, since that travel advisory was issued, there's been another travel advisory for a U.S. state. They issued one for Florida due to the fact that Florida is also continuing to pass legislation that has contributed to a rise in discrimination in that state as well. Now, I trust that no one here needs to be convinced of the importance of fair housing legislation and fair housing policies, but I am a former history teacher, so I hope that you will indulge me in a little history anecdote. So Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gets talked about a lot whenever we talk about the civil rights movement. And predominantly we talk about, his work in the South, Selma, the bus boycotts, things along those lines. What isn't talked about, I believe, enough is in 1965, him coming up to Chicago and spearheading movements to try to eliminate and eradicate slum housing in Chicago. He was there for about 17 months, and he worked with a bunch of organizers from Chicago to organize rallies, marches, boycotts, all in the name of advocating for equitable housing for all Chicagoans, irrespective of their race. Now, during that time, whenever he would talk about housing, he would often intertwine the issue of housing with other societal problems, including education, employment, and healthcare. What he understood is that our society's problems are intricately interwoven. That if an individual is suffering from housing instability, that is going to affect their ability to get a quality education. It's going to affect their ability to hold down meaningful employment. It's going to hinder their ability to get healthcare. And those things also interweave with their ability to get housing. Right? If you don't have a stable job, it becomes hard to get housing. It's hard to get healthcare. If you are chronically ill, it becomes hard to get housing, et cetera, et cetera. And what he understood these intrinsic interconnectedness of the social issues. This is being reaffirmed year after year by research. Right? One of the things that my wife brought to my attention like years ago was this idea of the housing first approach for individuals that are suffering from a myriad of issues, right? That you can get people programs for, mental health treatment, addiction treatment, helping them get a job, things along those lines. But the best way to make sure that the positive effects of those interventions stick is to, as a very first step, help that person secure housing. If they have housing, if they have a place to lay their head at night that they can guarantee that they will be able to get to, that it's safe and provides them with adequate shelter, they are more likely to continue on and succeed in those other interventions. Now, I would like to be able to tell you that, Dr. King completely succeeded and all of these societal ills are gone, but unfortunately, that's not the reality of our time. We are still dealing with bigotry and discrimination in a multitude of areas of society. But I firmly believe that, if we have the right tools, such as the Fair Housing Act, we will be able to create meaningful change and hopefully chip away at the bigotry and discrimination that plagues our society. Now, all of that led me to filing HB 2000, which is the bill that most of the news articles that you saw were about. Now, the bill is 39 pages long. I am not going to read through the entire bill today, but if you're looking for some super exciting reading later on and you really enjoy legalese, feel free to look at it, in its entirety. But I'm going to give you some Cliff Notes versions of what is in the bill. So at its heart, what HB 2000 does is that it undoes SB 43 and then kind of beefs up what the MHRA was. So it's going to reverse all of the hurdles that I talked about that make it hard to hold people accountable when they do discriminate against individuals. In addition to that, it's going to move the current housing protections that exist in the MHRA. It's going to take those out of the MHRA, and it's going to move them into a new Missouri Fair Housing Act. And then it's going to expand upon those protections to make sure that we are in compliance with federal law. The reason why you want to move them out of the MHRA and into a new act is that it makes it easier for judges, jurors, et cetera, to understand. And it would make it easier to enforce when they are two separate pieces, right? It's going to make it easier to understand, easier to work with. Now, on top of making sure that we are protecting individuals from discrimination based on race, color, sex, familial status, national origin, and disability, this bill would also enact protections for individuals who are participating in or have successfully completed a supervised drug rehabilitation program. One of the other issues that is very near and dear to my heart is working with addiction recovery and harm reduction policies. So ensuring that those individuals have the ability, like I said, housing first, right? Making sure that they have stable housing so that they can succeed in these programs. In addition to that, it would expand the definition of familial status to include individuals who are pregnant or are in the process of gaining custody of a minor. That includes adoption, or if you're getting custody of a family member for a variety of reasons. That is going to protect a wider swath of people and really allow for some of the things that we are looking for as a society. Now, as you're probably aware, there is a lot of opposition to this bill. There's a lot of people that do not like the things that I'm trying to do. From my conversations, I've encountered a myriad of concerns. The main ones are people talking about property rights, right? So basically, don't tell me what to do with my property. Individuals that are afraid of the integrity of the free market. So they don't like the idea of the government coming in and regulating how businesses operate. And then the perception that these changes would actually increase the costs for both renters and home buyers, that people would have to raise the costs in order to cover the potential of lawsuits that they could face. Now, research shows that that's not the reality. That's not what's going to happen. But that is a concern that people will raise. These viewpoints come from, the individuals and organizations that you would expect. A lot of conservative lawmakers do not like this bill, and a lot of the organizations that represent landlords and real estate brokers, people along those lines, are not a fan of this bill. So not only are they trying to stop this bill from happening, not only are they pushing against this bill, but there's another bill that I want to draw your attention to, because they are also trying to make it harder. They're trying to further harm the fair housing landscape. The bill that I want to draw your attention to is HB 2385, which was spearheaded by Representative Keith Lee from St. Louis County. What this bill does, it specifies that no city or county may enact an ordinance that prohibits landlords from using income qualifying methods to determine whether to rent. So basically, if you get housing assistance, landlords would be able to tell you, no, I'm not going to take housing assistance. it would prohibit landlords from requesting, so it could not prohibit landlords from requesting tenants' criminal records. So if someone has like a misdemeanor, you could say, no, I'm not going to rent you. It would not allow for the limiting of the amount of a security deposit that's required from a tenant. One of the things that keeps a lot of people out of housing are those early requirements, whether it's an application fee, a high security deposit, the requirement that you have 3 times or 4 times the rent and monthly income. And it would also not allow for the requirement that the tenant receive the first right of refusal automatically if the property is sold. Now, I went back and I listened to the hearing for this bill, and it became very apparent that this bill was, at least in part, in response to some policies that were enacted in Kansas City. The mayor came and testified about the bill. A lot of people talked about, the mayor and policies that were put in place in Kansas City. So a lot of people were upset about that, and they are trying to change that through legislation. Now, that bill has made its way out of the House. It was passed with unanimous support from the Republican Party, and nearly all the Democrats voted no against it. There were 10 Democrats that voted present, and a handful of people were absent that day, which happens just about every day. So currently it's making its way through the Senate. It's passed out of committee in the Senate, so it'll be on the Senate floor sometime over the next 4 or 5 weeks. So with all of this happening, how can y'all help? Like, what can be done in order to counter these efforts, right? So we know that those opposing fair housing policies and fair housing legislation, they are well-financed and experienced, right? So it's important that, we are well-organized and that we are resolute in our endeavors, right? That we, keep going. So during my time in the House, I've seen several grassroots organizations be successful by being well organized and being resolute. The example that I'm going to give, it was a recent example, is advanced practice nurses. So there's been a bill that's been going through the House for the last few years that would give advanced practice nurses the ability to practice independently of a physician. And they've been pushing for this for years. Now, last week in emerging issues, this bill was up for a vote to pass out. And a couple days before the bill was set to be voted on, so on Monday, an amendment popped up that would have completely derailed the bill. The nurses would have said, like, kill the bill if this amendment gets put on. So what they did is that they started bombarding our offices with emails, phone calls, people in our office every day, multiple times a day, just displaying unity and determination in order to tell us why this amendment would be detrimental to them. And one of the things that's really important in that is that when they were discussing with us, they were telling their unique stories. A lot of people, whenever they send emails, they'll, send a copy and paste email, right? And I get hundreds of emails a day. So most reps, myself included, if we're getting copy and paste emails, we will see that and we'll register that that's a copy and paste email, but we're not going to read through that email every single time that it's sent, right? What is most effective, and the groups that are most effective are individuals that, tell a unique story. Tell me how this is going to affect you personally, or someone that you know personally. Because at the end of the day, the thing that moves people generally isn't data, it isn't stats, it's not charts, it's stories. It is humanizing the issue and really stressing the stories. So the nurses did this and it paid off. The amendment was not offered, the amendment was killed, and the bill passed out of committee successfully. So really what I want to stress with this is the power of organizing, being persistent, and being authentic, and how those things can garner significant outcomes. So in conclusion, I want to just say that I have no illusion that we're going to solve all of society's problems overnight. The road towards a just and equitable society is arduous, and there are numerous obstacles in the way. But, through collective action, solidarity, supporting each other, we do have the capacity to create genuine and positive change for our communities. And even if we do not see the fruitions of those efforts ourselves firsthand, by being persistent and persevering, we have the opportunity to ignite the flame of advocacy in the future generations, the same way that my mother ignited that flame in me 30 years ago. So thank you for having me. Thank you for listening. And again, mostly thank you for the work that you all do.
Thank you very much, Representative Mann, for sharing your story. I really do take that to heart. I think you and I probably had a very similar upbringing. My mom sounded a lot like your mom. So I do want to ask if anyone had questions before we let Representative Mann sign off here. Okay, Marzella, did you want to go ahead and I don't know if you can unmute yourself or if you want to put your question in the chat, or you're across the way from me if you just want to come over here and ask your question. Can you hear me? I can. I don't know. Why don't you come on over here?
Hello, Representative Mr. Mann. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
I
I hope you're doing well.
Me too.
Thank you.
I like your presentation. I have a question about HOA, Home Association, and how it disenfranchised people of color and all ethnicities when it was created. And now that people are having them, if there's any laws that's going to come up at any time soon to change the HOA and how they have operated in the past?
So one of the things that I did not mention is that HB 2000 actually does that. There is a provision in there that would ban HOAs from having discriminatory covenants. Because like you are correct, HOAs do have, historically, one of their purposes was to keep certain kinds of people out of the neighborhood, right?
Exactly.
And today they have, they might not be expressly for that, but they do have covenants and provisions that cause that. I will say I do my best to be kind and courteous to everyone that comes into my office. A few weeks ago, we had representatives from the organization that represents HOAs in the building. And I was telling everyone that it's rather unfortunate that they didn't come and talk to me, because it was one of the groups that I was ready to have some strong words for if they came and met with me. But you are definitely correct. And HB 2000 would do that. I'm not aware of any other legislation that might do that. But that might come up as a standalone sometime in the future.
Yeah, because they should have a cap on it. The amount that they charge is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I thought that the Martin Luther King talked about equal socialization, and you mentioned the organization, how education and healthcare kept people from accelerating in life. And I believe that's true too, but I think we're going to get there. We're getting there closer, because in 1972, they created a law for mental health that prohibit people from taking their loved ones and put them in institutions, because they did that egregiously out of fear that, they were gay, or they were suitable with other colors, or they just wanted to take their money. And I think that needs to be changed, because if you have a loved one that is ill and mentally ill, you have to get them before the judge before you can put them in an institution. And that has caused a lot of, we see transits that are very sick on the street, and their family don't want to deal with them because they can't put them in an institution. They can't get them to go to court so that the judge can give. Okay, that's my pet peeve. I'm just going.
Okay, we're going to take another question here we have in the chat from Madison Hayes. Could you share what you and your colleagues in the Senate are planning to do to defeat the SOI preemption bill?
So I believe what you mean by the SOI preemption bill is 2385, the bill that I had mentioned before.
Yes.
So like I said, it's passed out of the House. So there isn't a lot through official channels that I can do at this time. One of the things that the Senate has that we do not have is the filibuster, right? Which, for those of you that might not know, is the ability to stand on the Senate floor and talk for hours on end, not allowing anything to move through. Now we do have about 5 weeks left, including this week in the session. And the Senate, if you haven't noticed, is not the most functional place in Missouri, if you will. So one of the big hopes that we have, one of the main tools that we have on the Democratic side, is to foment and kind of add gasoline to the fires of chaos that exist within the building, right? So our biggest hope is to make sure that it does not get onto a piece of legislation that is moving. And if it does get onto a piece of legislation that is moving, to have the senators filibuster and negotiate in order to take it off. I know that this is something that is important to the senators from the Kansas City area, and something that they have a lot of power to work on. So one of the things that I would suggest on your end is to message those senators and let them know that this is something that's very important to you and something that you would like them to put a good deal of effort into to stop on their side of the building.
All right. Let's see. Okay, Medicine says thank you. And I say thank you, and I appreciate your time and consideration for joining us today. And we'll go ahead and let you go. I think the rain has stopped here. I hope it stopped there. Our director, Jaime Guillen, says thank you as well. He's going to be our next speaker. So we're going to go ahead and bring him on. So thank you again so much for joining us. And I'll reach out to your aide when we have this up on our website. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, Jaime Guillen, let me bring you up here. Okay, are you unmuted?
I believe so. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Okay, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our director, Jaime Guillen, who came on as Director of Civil Rights and Equal Opportunity in September of last year. He is giving us a 8-month update. I think it's 8 months to let us know what's been going on and where we're going to go from here. So thank you, Director Guillen. The floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you for putting this together. I want to thank everybody that's on the call, everybody that worked hard to put this together, first and foremost. As you know, kind of what Rio said, I took on this role in September of last year. So I think it's about 7 months. But within that time, there's been some challenges, but then I also think there's some accomplishments that we've had. And I think that us working as a team has actually helped me as well, I think, as everybody in our department move forward and be able to help us accomplish some of our goals that we want. I'll tell everyone here a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Mexico, but I did grow up here in Kansas City. I've pretty much lived here all my life. It's I've always thought of this as home, even though I have family in other places that I go visit. So it's always been a great place to live. I attended UMKC. I spent my first 10 years, approximately 10 years of my career working with Kansas City Public Schools. I worked there as a in the world languages department. So we did a lot of work with new residents into the district, new refugees. We had a new Americans program. So that was all interesting. I mean, you got to see people coming here, you know, and wanting to work, wanting to live, wanting to enjoy our city. So that was a really great experience for me. After that, I moved over to Jackson County. I started working there as a legislative aide for elected official. So I got a good kind of an insider view of local government there. It's a little different than here, but all local governments are a little different. I was a legislative aide for about 8 years, and then I moved over into the compliance review office. Well, let me step back. When I was working as a legislative aide, we were in the midst of establishing an MBE and WBE program for Jackson County. So I worked on the policy side of that for a while, and then that's when I transferred over to the compliance review office and went from doing the policy side to actually establishing and implementing that policy to create the program. So I spent quite a bit of time there. I left there as a chief compliance review officer last year, but during that time, we went from having no program to having a temporary stopgap program to actually having an established program for MBE, WBE. We also did prevailing wage, and we also had an outside agency, nonprofit funding arm to our office. So that was still good engagement with the community. I definitely liked that part of it, is being able to go out and meet with people, meet with residents, have an impact on the community. I'll talk about this a little bit later, but I think that's one of the things that I like to see with CREO. I know that we have some challenges as far as staffing and all that, which I will get to also, but I definitely want us to be out in the community, to make ourselves visible, to create awareness, to support our residents, our small businesses. That's kind of something like an overall vision of mine. And I think I've shared this with our team. And one thing that I will say off the bat is that I really appreciate the team that I walked in and met here. It's been 100% supportive. Everyone here, deputy, Rio, just to name a few. But one of the biggest things when I walked in here was just learning how things work. Now, I did have a background in small government and everything, but each entity is different. And when I walked in here, I was like in a whirlwind. So they were instrumental in helping me navigate through those first couple months, because I will say the first maybe 2-3 months was just me kind of just like, what is going on here? How does this work? How does this move? And they were very instrumental in helping me get through that. Another thing that was a challenge, let me see here. Walking in here was resources, as always. For us specifically in CREO in our department, it's team members, it's staff. I think all of us go up and above to try to make sure that we're meeting our mandates established by code. So that has always been something that, you know, once I walked in, I saw it. Even before I started, I had conversations with Deputy Jones, and that was on the forefront. So that is something we continue to struggle with, and hopefully we get there to where we not only fill the existing vacancies we have, but we're also able to add to our team to accomplish some of the vision that we have. I think we've started with a good trajectory as far as what we want to do. We've added some structure to our department. And we want to make it an environment where you can come and join us. Hopefully you stay with us. you can move up through our department, and we are able to kind of minimize the loss of institutional knowledge that is pretty prevalent in local governments. So that's something that I think we've started to lay the groundwork. So I think I'm pretty proud of that. Another thing, walking in this place in those first few months, is that I walked into a budget cycle that needed to be done. Again, I'm also I'm very proud of the team that got together to tackle that, because it was, I believe, everyone's first budget cycle that we were thrown into. So I'm very proud of everybody that had something to do with that. People on this call, other people that are within our office. There was many long nights here. I know that there was work over the weekends, but it was accomplished. I always look at, when I look at, challenges and all that, I think they're temporary barriers that we learn from. So I think we're better equipped and in a better position going forward to tackle things like that, like our budget. I'm very happy to announce, when we did this, that we talked about this before, we did submit it on time. We submitted it on that same day, but it was a little late in the night when we did that, but we did do it on the right day. So I thought that was a great accomplishment there. Kind of testament of the dedication of the team that we have here. So, that's something that I'm going to always say it. I tell everybody thank you at the end of the day if I see you, because I think everybody here is doing their part. They're dedicated, and I really appreciate that. So those are some of the big things that I saw in my first couple months here. What I want to see in the future, like I said earlier, is a strengthened outreach, an intentional outreach. So our residents and our small businesses and all of our stakeholders know what we do and how we can help, and also how we can partner with other people. So that's something that I definitely want to see moving forward. I know a lot of our divisions are working on that already. So we want to be more visible out in the community, as well as here. We want to partner with everybody. I think internally we've started that process by reaching out to other departments, working with them, trying to bring awareness to what our processes are like, and everything. So I think that's also a great accomplishment. But going forward, that's just one of the things that visibility for sure, and us being able to tell our story. So having said that, the first 7 months, I think it is 7 months, it's been both rewarding and challenging, but I think that's how we learn, right? I said that earlier. I'm very proud of where we are right now. I think we're in a great trajectory. I do recognize that there's still lots of work to do. There's lots of work, and I'm counting a lot on my team to get there. And I'm committed. I'm committed to continuing to advocate for, the residents of the city, as well as my team, because I think that, we're going to leave a mark here. So we want this to be a more just and equitable place for everybody. And I think it takes all of us to do that. So pretty much that's what I wanted to say here today. And very proud of the team again. And this is great. And I hope to see you next month.
Thank you very much, Director Guillen. And yes, you're right. It's to be exact, I did the math, 7 months and 5 days.
Yeah, 5 days.
So thank you. And here's to the next 7 months and 5 days. We'll have another budget round coming up in that time. So I'm sure there will be another more late nights and weekends and pizza.
And pizza, right?
Yes. So thank you so much. Any questions for the director before we go on with our program? Again, you're welcome to type it in the chat, or if you have access to your microphone, you can turn that on. Yeah. I do not see anything coming up, so I guess you're safe, off the hook.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank
We're
you.
going to go ahead and turn it over to Senior Civil Rights Specialist Daniel O'Connor, who I think when Representative Mann talked about the legalese in HB 2000, I think Dan might have gotten excited there
Oh yeah,
about
excellent.
reading that later. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
okay. You want to go ahead, Dan? I'm going to mute myself because I can hear myself through your mic. So,
Good morning, everybody. So my name is Daniel O'Connor. I'm a senior investigator here with the Kansas City Department of Civil Rights and Equal Opportunity. I've been here for about a year, but I'm an attorney by training. I've been working as an investigator for about 9 years now, so I've got lots of experience. I've seen lots of cases, very often in the employment context. I've interned with the Department of Housing and Urban Development's Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity. I've put together enforcement programs on a variety of laws, like the pay transparency provisions for the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act in Colorado. And I was previously with the Missouri Commission on Human Rights. And so I'm very excited to be here. I think CREO is doing great work. I think we have the capacity here to take more cases. I think we are not as well known in the community as we can be. So we have the capacity to process more cases than we're getting. A lot of those cases are going to the Missouri Commission on Human Rights, and I can tell you from being there, they are not processing them as quickly as would be ideal. So if there's discrimination that occurs in the city of Kansas City, I would certainly encourage people to file them here with us with CREO. If someone does believe that they've experienced discrimination in employment, housing, or public accommodations within the municipality and meets their basic jurisdictional limits, like 180 days from the alleged discrimination, I would encourage them to go to our website in mykcmo.org. It's still the Civil Rights Department in there, but we're Civil Rights and Equal Opportunity now. And I would also encourage anyone to file a complaint through the My Civic app, MyKCMO. It's a mobile app that you can file a report of discrimination. We'll look at it and decide if we can accept the complaint, if it's jurisdictional for us. We'll perform an investigation. We'll request position statements from the respondent. We will conduct interviews with both parties. We'll make document requests. We'll find out what happened. Mediation is always available and encouraged for the parties. Mediation can be a quicker, cheaper way for the parties to find a mutually agreeable resolution to their dispute. We do have trained mediators on staff, and we encourage that at all times. If we need to render a decision, we can render an enforceable, appealable decision of probable cause or no probable cause. It will stand up in the courts. If it does get to that, the parties would then go through conciliation. If there's a finding of probable cause, that would be a second mandatory mediation attempt. If they fail to reach an agreement at that point, then the parties would either be referred to the Missouri Human Rights Commission for public hearing, or they could be prosecuted in local court. There's a number of remedies available to the parties: fines, penalties, suspension of business licenses, and we would always encourage terms that discourage future discrimination from occurring. And so we certainly encourage everyone to file with us if they're jurisdictional. We can take more cases. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't see any questions coming up, but I just want to add, well, first off, thank you very much. It was very concise and thorough. I do want to encourage everyone to visit our website. It is undergoing some changes slowly but surely, but we do have all the information there, and we are continuing to add more as changes are made to our ordinance and updates. So it is kcmo.org/CREO, CREO. And so please visit there. And again, you can also go to kcmo.gov/CREO, and then kcmo.gov/311 will take you to the pages where you can file complaints through the My KCMO app, online, or you can call 311 and file there as well. So thank you, Dan. All right, we do plan to come back next month. We were hoping to do this on Tuesdays. However, the transportation infrastructure and operations, excuse me, I just need to make some changes here. Committee meetings are going to be changing to Tuesdays, so we're going to go back to the drawing board and change our dates. So we may be doing this on another day of the week on a monthly basis. So we will certainly let you know when that is. It'll be posted on our website and on the city's calendar. And we have already started working on what our topics will be for next month and for the months coming. Also, when we send out the invitations, we have asked for feedback on what you would like to see. And so I do appreciate those of you who have provided some topics, and we will certainly consider those as well. So thank you, everyone who have joined us today. Again, we will be posting this on our website, and you're more than welcome to share it with anybody who wasn't able to join us today. And thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.